And for all the questions, because I'm sure there's so many people that are like, if he wasn't compassionate or if he wasn't this, like, why did you stay with him? And it's simply because the most confusing thing for me was because I saw it in you. I saw you give that to everybody else. And so I knew that there was a disconnect that was deeper than your control, and it was rooted from something that you had experienced. Well, you look nice.
Thank you.
Where are you going?
I got plans.
You have a date?
After this. You ain't the only one trying to be the only one. I be talking that fresh, I don't need gum.
I bet you used to love that line.
I be talking that fresh stuff, baby. I don't even need gum. You know?
Where'd you get that line from? That sounds like a dad joke.
That's a good line. Anyways, today, as we are lively, we are back. The sun's out. Last episodes were a little
bit of a push.
Low energy. Okay. Today, I wanted to talk about basically, how do you know how long to stay in a relationship, or how do you know when to leave a relationship? Pretty common.
Yeah.
Pretty common question. Can you relate?
Yeah. It's like
with you.
It's hard to kind of give a very black-white answer to that.
Yeah.
Because there's just so much context that goes into play, but I'll let you.
Have you been in a scenario where you've contemplated?
Struggled?
Yeah, like, I don't know if I should stay or if I should go.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of, early times with us where I questioned it. And like I said, if you hadn't have moved in, I think it would have been more easy for me to let go.
Yeah. I've definitely been in a couple scenarios like that, and struggled with really finding out. I think the biggest reason why I struggled, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, is we can just stay married and hold on to every bit of our partner's potential of who they could be, who we wish they would be. Yeah. And maybe sometimes who we think they should be. And unfortunately, oftentimes people do not live up to their potential, and then you're stuck there still waiting, hoping and wishing, and they never come to their full potential.
Yeah.
So
I don't think I've ever thought of a partner of what they should be.
Really?
Yeah, maybe like what I think they could be.
Yeah, I guess
their potential. But I think what you should be just seems like more of what I'm trying to control them to be.
Yeah, should is maybe harsh.
Yeah.
When I say should, I mean like if you should be kinder if you're an asshole.
Oh yeah.
Or a jerk. You should be a little nicer to people, or you should be more polite, or you shouldn't treat people like that. Like, that's what I mean by should be. But anyways, in a book that I recently read, which is a heavily favored book in my library, I talk about it quite often. I talked about it in the episode I had with Lauren. It's titled Us by Terrence Real. I'm going to be referencing this book quite a bit in this episode, so honey, just follow along as I read along. But the reason why I wanted to tackle this book and open it up, no pun intended, for this episode, is because there's a stat in the book. And I want to ask you a question. And by the way, you can just pretend like you're surprised.
Okay.
I want to ask you a question. What percentage do you think people need in order to stay in a relationship? So more specifically, what percentage of good and what percentage of bad, right? So what percentage of bad, I guess we'll go with, do you think people can tolerate and still stay in a relationship out of 100?
I mean, without overthinking it, my initial answer would be how much of bad?
Yeah, like how much?
It would have to be under half.
Okay, so there's got to be more good than bad for you.
That's what I would. Yeah. Without overthinking it.
Right.
That's just off the top.
So you just could throw out a percentage.
45.
So 55 good, 45 bad.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. That's the secure attachment
nice?
style in you. That's very generous. For me, very generous. For me,
I mean, because I'm also thinking like bad. When I think bad, I'm not thinking of like strong bad things. I'm thinking of like it could be a lot of like little bad things, you know, that you just kind of have to pick your battles. So
yeah, but the little bad things add up.
Yeah.
Okay. For me, without overthinking it, I would say I would need and require 65 good, 35 bad.
So basically that means I'm nearly perfect.
What?
Because you would require 65 good.
Yeah.
And 35 bad.
Yeah, but 65 in the academic schedule, or not schedule, the academic testing.
Mm-hmm.
65 when I was in school is like a D minus.
No, but I'm just saying, so like if you require no more than 35% bad, that means I definitely don't have more than 35% bad.
Right.
Am I at 35%?
I'm
just kidding. Don't answer. I don't really want to.
No, you're less than that. I would say, I mean, again, this would be me if I was single dating, right?
Yeah.
Or if this would be me if I'm contemplating leaving a relationship.
Okay.
I would need 65 good, 35 bad.
Okay. So is this statistic for just married people or just people in like really long-term,
long-term committed relationships.
Okay.
Yeah. But to answer your question, I would say I would give you 85 good, 15 bad.
I'll take it.
Yeah,
I'm happy.
That's great.
That's a B plus.
It's a B. I think it's an A minus nowadays. Like I was talking to Adriana the other day. She's like, I got an 80 something. I got an A.
I'm keeping
like,
my standards where they are. That's a B plus.
Yeah, which is great. No one's perfect.
Yeah. My scale is gonna remain old fashioned.
Yeah, exactly. Dating ourselves. Okay. So in this book, there was a study that said that in terms, again, of how much of the bad can someone stay in as long as, you know, this bad is a good enough holding environment, 70% of people can tolerate 70% of bad in a relationship.
Wow.
All they need
70% bad.
All they need is 30% good.
So that definitely must not mean like strong bads. That's like all the bads.
Yeah,
like
I mean we'll get into it a little bit like more detail, but yeah, I'm assuming like you leave the dish in the sink or the toilet seat's up or you
clothes
know,
on the floor.
You don't listen. I ask you to wash the car.
Yeah,
you know, stuff like that. But I mean, that's 70% is a lot.
Yeah.
To me, I don't know. So it says 70% misalignment to 30% alignment. People can tolerate that as long, here's the caveat, as long as that misalignment, again, that 70% bad, gets repaired.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big important part. So let's stay with that for a second. We've talked about this so many times in the show about when people say, well, how did you know to stay for JD? Like, how did you know he was going to change? How did you have that faith and that trust? And what's your answer all the time?
I saw that you wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
And 2, I saw that you were trying to get it.
Yeah. So I was trying to repair that misalignment.
Yeah. But I think it was a happy balance between knowing you wanted it and seeing you trying to get it, because anybody can try, you know,
sure.
and like, you know, they always say, like, if you're a smoker, like, you have to really down to your core want to stop smoking to stop smoking. You can go to all the things and
hypnosis
try to do all the things, but if your core doesn't want it, it makes it that much harder. So I think for you, it's like I saw that in your core you wanted it, and you were doing everything to try to get it.
Yeah. So again, that repair is really crucial. As long as the misalignment gets repaired. So he goes on to say, well, how do you repair exactly? So he says, for luggage carrying grown-ups, which definitely was me, meaning baggage.
Oh, I was like, wait.
Yeah, for heavy luggage carrying, aka baggage grown-ups, it's more complex. We get triggered. New wounds evoked old ones. Present conflicts are encrusted with scar tissue from injuries long past. And we group people of our present with expectations from our past, aka you will treat me as they did. So moving on, neurobiologists speak of such negative expectations as part of our implicit memory. So the projected assumptions about ourselves and the world and how the world will react to us. Our negative expectations in the present are carryovers, a type of learning, if you will, from our past. So from discord that was too much or too intense, that is traumatic, and from our discord that was left routinely unrepaired. The key lies in felt experience of safety. And safety, from my family therapy perspective, is a boundary issue, an issue of distance regulation. So what I gather from this little snippet is you will treat me as they did. And that was heavily me going into our relationship when I was triggered. There's another section in here. Actually, I want to read off. That's a great one-liner that says, trauma doesn't precisely get remembered. It gets relived. Again, trauma doesn't precisely get remembered. I can't necessarily pinpoint exactly what traumatic experience happened, what date, how old I was, etc., but it definitely gets relived when we're triggered. And so I think in that moment, I was so afraid of having that trauma relived, or I felt like it was about to be relived, that I would nitpick,
try to take
control, pull back a little bit, walls up, guard up, etc. And unfortunately, that's where the disharmony, back to that, would happen. The misalignment would happen. He goes on to say that Stephen Porges, I hope I pronounced that correctly, Stephen Porges, I guess. He says that finding safety in another person really comes down to two important things: the absence of an agenda and the absence of judgment. So for example,
I get like for me to feel safe with you, I have to feel that there's no judgment and no agenda coming from you.
Yeah. Did you feel in the past when we were at misalignment moments, there was an agenda, or you did feel judged?
I mean, I definitely, with like the nitpicking, I felt like I was constantly walking on eggshells sometimes. So definitely felt the judgment part. What was the other one?
An agenda.
An agenda. I don't know so much.
I'm
like,
gonna
like define the agenda.
I'm gonna make a very specific example for you that you will.
I have something in my head, but I just want to know if I'm understanding it correctly.
Because you say it almost every time you come on this show. I always felt like Justin had this puzzle, and it was insert girl here. Yeah, that's an agenda.
Yeah, that's exactly what my mind went to. But I was like, I don't know if I'm like.
Yeah, no, you're right there.
Piecing it the right way.
There you go.
Or understanding it the right way. So I didn't want to use that.
Yeah, but that's true. I mean that, not exactly was my agenda, but more or less was an agenda that I had, and I definitely would judge often. And you probably then therefore didn't really feel safe, or this was a safe space, or you were able to be your full comfortable self with me, which again just really probably led to that misalignment. Because again, during the time of engagement leading up to the wedding, moving in, there was a lot of misalignment, and for sure I think, again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but did it feel like that agenda was there, that judgment was there during that time, like heavily?
Definitely. I mean, right before we got engaged, I felt like we were going through a really rough patch where I was feeling like I would have never thought you were shopping for rings and all of that.
Yeah.
And it makes sense now that I kind of understand like where you felt all the things of me being the one, but at the same time, I almost feel like you were in battle with yourself, because you were, what you felt was me being the one was also what you feared.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Like, meaning you ultimately wanted to find a girl and get married. But I think that because you didn't know what that looked like, and because you feared the heartbreak that I could possibly, bring. Yeah. You were like battling those two sides from within.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think a lot of that comes down to that control piece and leading with fear. So I didn't have much control in it, and so my fear was, what if she changes her mind?
Yeah.
What if it doesn't work out? What if she says, you know what, this is not for me?
So because of all those questions and those fear things, you were like, well, I don't even know if she is the one because she does this and she does that and she doesn't do this right. And then you're highlighting those things and then you're focusing on them and then you're bringing them up to me and almost tearing me down, you know?
Yeah.
And trying to find a reason for it not to be, I don't know.
I was trying to, and we actually got this advice from Red Table Talk from one of the creators, Jada's partner. She said, basically more or less, don't let your worst nightmare come true.
Yeah.
And that's basically what I was trying to do. Not intentionally, obviously, but I was thinking my worst nightmare was going to come true. So how can I make sure it doesn't happen? But I'm going to gain control. And then we just were misaligned. Back to that 70%. Pardon the interruption. Just wanted to hop in here really quick for a couple reminders. The first reminder is the merch is available and it is back better than ever. I have some beautiful, super dope new designs, especially with the gratitude for the win, therapy for the win, and the vulnerability and normalizing that for men. Those 3 designs are brand new. I personally love them and I'm really excited to showcase them to you guys. And I'm hoping you have the same feeling that I do. So you can go get those right now at justindavis.life. That's justindavis.life. Of course, the link will be in the description below, whether you're listening or watching this. But again, just a friendly reminder, still merch out here. Got some long sleeves, got some crew neck sweatshirts, got some hoodies, got some t-shirts, whatever you need, whatever climate and season you're in. By the way, this time, as I switch some stuff around, shipping worldwide. I repeat, shipping worldwide. So all the international followers and the beautiful supporters of the community, I'm sorry about the past, but it's a new day. Get your merch too. It costs you a little pretty penny because shipping overseas apparently is crazy expensive, as I came to find out. But nonetheless, we are now shipping internationally. So justindavis.life, go get yours, support your boy, and spread the message. Some beautiful ones out there. Back to the episode. Also in here, it says the best way to open another's heart, it turns out, is to open your own heart. That is something I wish I would have remembered when we were going into the walls up and guards topic, because that's so true. I definitely didn't have my heart open. So therefore, how could I open up your heart?
And it was almost like you always say, you wanted the reward without the risk.
Well, no, you're close. I wanted the guarantee.
Or the guarantee.
Without the risk, basically, which I think is most people. And I'm a guy, so I think mainly men for sure. And so, I definitely wanted the guarantee without the risk. And I always remember feeling like you had this reserve still within you, which drove me crazy. It was a little bit of a trigger from my past relationship that I had. But I also knew like what I was willing to give. And I had heard you say how much you would give. Like you said the other day, my love just gets stronger and deeper and better with time. And I was like, well, that's a risk that I don't really want to take, because if I can't see it now, right?
And I feel like that side of like my love, like, I mean, it's part of who I've always been, you know. It's like you can appreciate the fact that I never have done a lot of the things that I do with you and the levels that I have gotten with you with anybody, because I had that reserve for my, like, you know, saving it for someone special. I wasn't like somebody that I don't just jump from one relationship to another. I don't just call anybody a boyfriend, you know. It's just like I've always been so selective and so guarded to that side of me that I know like it exists, but I'm not going to also just give it to anybody who I don't feel at that moment deserves it.
And what's interesting about that is I'm the complete opposite. Used to be, because I would jump from one relationship to another. And I realized that I wasn't jumping from one relationship to another to try to find a different partner. I was trying to find a different me.
Yeah, that's good.
So for me, the whole time I'm like, I know what I have to give. I know the potential and the
Mm-hmm.
capability, and I just need to find that piece of this puzzle to pour into.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like when it was you, when I realized it was you, I'm like, oh,
Why
this
is
is
this?
well, I was like, this is gonna be a different me, the me I always wanted. Finally, with a different person, kind of like a clean slate, fresh start. Let's see what we can do.
But I feel like that's the pressure that you put on me,
Yes.
and I cannot be responsible for bringing out the best side of you. You should
Yeah.
come to that relationship with the best version of you
Right.
and not have to rely on somebody else to like pull that out of you.
Yeah.
I think like for me it's like I never, when the difference between us is like you would jump from one relationship to another, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it was very much you were trying to find a better version of yourself while simultaneously filling the holes you had in yourself.
Yeah. While also simultaneously leaving a huge construction site in my past
Yeah.
of the ex I just left. But yes. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So whereas to me, like I already knew what hole I had to give, like hole, not like an empty hole. For me, it was like whole, WHOLE,
Yeah.
whole, like
Right.
the wholeness I had to give somebody, and I was selective of who I gave that to.
Which again, that's that, I don't have patience, and that's
Mm-hmm.
that, risk that I wasn't sure I could take
Mm-hmm.
because I knew the severity of the situation. If we were just dating casually, like fine, whatever. I don't really have that much to lose, but
Mm-hmm.
for the first time in a long time, I was fully invested, fully committed,
Mm-hmm.
trying different things I'd never tried before. Felt really good about my gut intuition that you were it, and we were meant to be together.
Mm-hmm.
And love you to death, honey, but you were moving at a turtle's pace, and it drove me
Yeah.
crazy. But that's just that fear. And that's what I was
Yeah.
saying, we've been filming so much here. I don't even know what episode
I
I
know.
said this in, but I remember saying that's when it was really hard for me because I didn't feel the reciprocation from you. You had this
Mm-hmm.
just this slow, steady, consistent pace.
But I think if your transition to who you are today happened faster, you would have got
Yeah.
the faster result from me.
Oh,
But
okay.
does that make sense?
Yeah, I thought you were going to say I would have been more aligned with your turtle's pace.
No, it would have sped up
Okay. Turtle's
like
pace.
my turtle's pace because I would have been able to trust you faster.
Got it.
I would have we would have built more core foundations of what I was missing to give that part of me to you.
Right.
There was stuff I was missing on your end, and so while you thought you were being patient for me, I'm the one who was really being patient for you.
Right.
So as much as you like to be in control, like little did you know, like you were controlling that.
But yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I kind of wish I realized that I was in control, because I definitely didn't feel like I
Mhm.
did. Not that I wanted to be in control, but it would have been nice to know
Yeah.
that if it's like a help me help you thing,
Mhm.
like if I could just be more aware and self-aware at this in this moment, I could actually help you
Yeah.
along your pace to open you up more,
Mhm.
bring down some of those walls, or at least not have you keep stacking them
But
up.
I don't think that you knew how. That's the thing, is like
I
even
didn't
like
know.
it's a lot of the little things, It's
Yeah.
like what I was missing from you was that feeling of safety, that warm compassion feeling,
Mhm.
the empathy, the sympathy, and it was like the little moments that you didn't know how to be compassionate,
Right.
and I knew that you were trying to be, and I knew you were trying to understand it, and I knew that you were diving into that, but so I was like ultimately being patient, but I couldn't just feel safe with you without feeling like you're providing that safety for
Yeah,
me, if
I
that
know what
makes
you mean.
sense.
Yeah, totally.
And now it like there's so many little moments, like something as simple, I'm going to try to like think of something as
Mhm.
simple of when something as simple as when I'm working and I'm
Mhm.
like on a Zoom call and you give me the respect and that boundary of like not, coming in the room and like, as if it's just your world, and just like where I feel respected, like, oh, like he sees that I'm as I do you when you're on your consultations, I think like even just little things like that make me feel like respected and make me feel or other stuff when I'm sick. Like before I
Mm-hmm.
used to feel like it was a burden to you, you know, and now
Yeah.
I feel like you empathize when I'm sick and you like
Yeah.
feel bad and you try to help. Those were all the things that I was missing in the past. And it's crazy because like that sounds like so harsh to say that you were like that because you're such a giving person, but you were giving to the people that couldn't hurt you.
Exactly.
And the person that could hurt you, like me, I think you didn't know how to show up in that giving, loving, empathetic, like compassionate way. And for all the questions, because I'm sure there's so many people that are like, if he wasn't compassionate or if he wasn't this, like, why did you stay with him? And it's simply because the most confusing thing for me was because I saw it in you. I saw you give that to everybody else. And so I knew that there was a disconnect that was deeper than your control. Mm-hmm. And it was rooted from something that you had experienced.
Yeah. Did you know that?
I mean, when we would have conversations about certain things and stuff, I think it took me a while to really, you know, understand the depth of what you went through, how it had affected you. Mm-hmm. Because initially, and we know this, we've talked about this before, I used to just always compare your experiences to mine. And I used to not dismiss, but not feel like it was anything that you should, you know, why you should be the way you are.
Right.
Because I felt like what I went through was so much worse. And, you know, like, look at me, you know, type thing. But, but it was like, you know, it was your experience and it was your trauma and it was your triggers, regardless of how small, big, mediocre they were. Yeah. You know, we're all built different and we all process things different and handle things different. And I think I feel like my mom was just like taught me so many different levels of understanding, forgiving, and compassion and all of that, you know, and I feel like you weren't really taught those things.
I wasn't.
Or maybe you were and you just never absorbed those characteristics from, you know.
Yeah, no, sadly. But you brought up a good point, and I think it's I want to go back to it. I think it's important for suggestions or advice to women dealing with men who may have a hard time expressing their feelings, tapping into that vulnerability side and transparency side. When Shay was saying, you thought my traumas and experiences that I viewed as monumental in my me being who I am today and who I was growing up, you didn't view them as monumental. You didn't view them as like word, like that's not that you were insensitive, but you know, your reference point is your trauma. So you were like, that's what's holding you up here. Right. And I'm like, yes, this is the end of the world. You know,
I thought it was more of like an excuse.
Yeah.
To some degree, because I'm like, there's no way that came from that.
Sure.
Or this came from that.
Yeah. However, a lot of it did. Yeah. And again, for women, I want you ladies to understand, and maybe it's men, maybe your partners, is your mic okay?
Yeah.
You know, maybe for men, maybe your partners is not able to be that vulnerable or transparent either. I want you guys to really hone in on the fact that if your partner is really struggling based on a traumatic experience that they went through, please respect their feelings. Please respect their traumas. There's a saying in the book, What Happened to You by Oprah and Bruce Perry. And Oprah says, you know, not all traumas have to be a capital T. They can be a lowercase t. My traumas and your dictionary definition of traumas was lowercase t's. For me, they were capital T's. But they're still traumas. Yeah. There's still a T there.
And I think at that time, just to kind of give like a little bit more depth, I don't think it was until we started diving into your traumas, exactly like more of like the root that I really understood it. But I think like that surface level of trauma, like grew up with a single mom, dad was in and out of the life, like that, I was like, that's it. Like,
right. You're like,
I
me
did
too.
the same thing,
right,
plus more, you know? But it was until we dove into like all the other like layers to it.
Yeah. So again, like just please be mindful, be respectful, be empathetic to your partner's traumas, because although there might not be a capital T for you, it is a capital T to them. And the only way to really help them heal this traumatic experience
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully prevent, problems in your relationship is to really support them and listen to understand and versus reply. Listen to try to accept and not dismiss their traumas, because that would do wonders for your partner.
Yeah, and try to understand it from who they are as a person,
Yeah.
and try to help them understand it, because maybe they're not even understanding the depth or the layers of it. So I think that really helped me, was just understanding the depth. And it's hard to probably open up about stuff like that, and I'm thankful that you did, because it allowed me to understand all of the layers and depth within your trauma.
Yeah, for sure. And also it helped that you didn't enable the behaviors. You stood your ground, you laid your boundaries down, and then B, you really allowed me to really dig deep and get my own answers to it. You weren't like, well, this is why. So see, you were just kind of like, almost like therapeutic. Like, well, how does that make you feel? You know what I mean? And I would dig and dig, and we would dig and dig, and I would be like, oh, here we go. And we're like, great, now we got it.
Yeah.
Because that's sustainability. That's going to be long term. So we did a great job, love. Okay. Moving on into the book, I want to go over one more thing, and this is for married couples. So the author references James Framo, and he calls him the father of couples therapy. And he once said that the day you turn to the person sleeping next to you and realize that you have been had, and that this is not the person you fell in love with, and that this is all some dreadful mistake, he said that is the first day of your real marriage.
What? I thought that was going to go totally somewhere.
Isn't that crazy?
Else.
The day you wake up,
feel had.
Yeah, the day you turn to the person sleeping next to you and you realize you've been had, this is not the person you fell in love with, and this is some awful, dreadful mistake, that's the first day of your real marriage. He said, welcome to humanity. And what he's trying to convey is, I'm going to have to do it.
What? You can't see?
I can. It's just like a lot easier if I have them on. I think the highlight is throwing me off. So he talks about what a great thing that turns out to be. So while many may long to be married to the perfection, we may, He says, while we may long to be married to perfection, it turns out it is precisely the collision of your particular imperfections with mine, and how we as a couple handle that collision. That is the guts, the actual stuff of intimacy.
I actually love that.
Oh, so now you're good.
I actually really love that. I mean, it kind of goes back to my whole argument with you when we used to fight, and you would say, I didn't sign up for this, and I felt like this is what's going to make us. These moments are what make us.
Right.
I feel like we have to know how to fight. We have to know how to talk about the hard stuff, and how to be okay with disagreeing and not always agreeing, and not always being in alignment with one another, not always feeling perfect for one another. I think that's love. Like that is like, when you think of like that unconditional love of like my mom has for me, it's like she's seen all my imperfections and still loves me. And I think that that's like when someone will ultimately feel safe in a relationship, when you know and I know that we've both seen each other's imperfections and we're still here.
Yeah. Yeah, it just makes me think like, I guess after this, the goal is to love, as much as I love your perfections, I need to also love your imperfections and everything else in between.
Yeah.
But he said that's the guts. That's the actual stuff of intimacy. So it's harmony, then disharmony, then repair. And that's the essential rhythm of all close relationships. He goes, another way to look at it in layman's terms is like walking. You have your balance, then you stumble, you catch yourself, and you get rebalanced. And so back to that 70% disharmony and 30% harmony, like that's what people in this survey, this stat can actually do. They can do 70% of disharmony or misalignment. So
it's almost like harmony, disharmony, repair, harmony, disharmony, repair. I mean, not to go into an analogy, but if you think about it, when we're hiking, if we had like the easiest hike where it was just all downhill or all straight, it's like nothing's fun in that, right?
Right.
Or if it's just like completely challenging all the time, nothing's fun in that. But it's like when you have the challenging parts, and then you flatline, and then you go down, have the easy part, and then you're back up for a challenging part. It makes you appreciate all of the parts. It makes you appreciate the challenging parts. It makes you appreciate the non-challenging parts, you know? And I think overall it just makes everything better. And I think even for us, like, you know, when we've gone through like the bad valleys and then come out and, you know, it's rainbows and sunshines, like it makes the rainbows and sunshines just so much more like
vibrant and bright and colorful. 100%. I agree. It's about finding connection, losing it, and then finding it again. And that's what I empathize with people who are really struggling to try to figure out, where am I in this relationship? Are we in the harmony phase? Well, I guess if you are, you're not questioning that. But how much of the disharmony is happening here? How much are we misaligned? Is it 70%? Is it 80%? And if it is 70%, has it been 70% for longer than you can tolerate and accept, or is it just starting and you realize, okay, well, how do we repair this? We get back to the harmony. And I think in those moments, and I don't really think
I think what makes relationships strong is when they go through those challenging times.
Yes.
Like you can, if you challenge your body, you'll get stronger, right? You challenge your relationship, it's going to get stronger. So I feel like I love when we go through the challenging. It's like, especially when the more mature our relationship has gotten, the better we've gotten at communicating and being able to live in those challenging moments, you know?
Yeah. And again, it makes it that much sweeter. Pardon the interruption, part 2. Right now, I wanted to come in and talk about what you continue to hear me talking about throughout this episode and this season, which is the consultations that I offer. Consultations with JD may or may not be for you, but if they are for you, or you're thinking, can they be for me? Let's go over what entails a consultation with JD. First off, it's one-on-one between you and I, or you and I and Shay, if you'd like, or better yet, you, your partner, me, and Shay. Now, I record every single session via Zoom because of this main reason. You're not gonna have to worry about what I said, what you said, what Shay said, what we came up with. You can just focus, and when I send you the recording after the session's over, you can play the recording back, listen to it, watch it as many times as you'd like to soak up all the information that we got throughout that session. Lastly, I'm gonna read a couple of different reviews that I've had from my clients I thought I'd share, just again, so you can get an idea of what's the session like with JD. My consultation with JD was a great experience. He allowed me to see my situation from a different point of view, which was very helpful, even more so than my therapy sessions. Sessions with JD can't be described in one word, so I'll use a few. Informative, understanding, deep, sobering, realizing, inspirational, kind, and growing. He shows up just as much as I do, if not more. It's a safe space where I can be myself. He will challenge you to help you grow at your own pace. And you wouldn't think that someone who doesn't know you at all can help you learn about yourself in just a couple sessions. JD is an incredibly skilled coach. He has such an easy way of connecting with you and making you feel seen and understood, yet he isn't afraid to challenge you and hold you accountable. We got right to it our first session, and I walked away with tactical next steps to take towards my goals. You get the sense he has really done the work for himself and is excited to share with others. I can't wait to work with him further. So again, a couple beautiful reviews from some amazing people, ones who I really admire to show up to do the work because it's not easy. But again, you don't have to do it alone. So consultations with JD, the link is in the description below. I'm here when you're ready to get to work. Back to the episode. So if people are questioning, like, should I stay or should I go? According to this book, as we've kind of outlined here today, again, figure out where you are in this harmony, disharmony, how long you've been here, and maybe why you're here. And also, let's be emotionally mature here about all this. How much responsibility and accountability do you need to take in the disharmony phase and in the misalignment phase? And whatever your percentage is, whatever you come up with, own it and try to give it 100% to try to repair, and then present this to your partner. You know, I think for me, one thing that I really undervalued, I guess I'll use that word, when it comes to relationship back then is communication. As simple of an answer as that is, and it's like people are, if you're underwhelmed by my answer, it's the truth. Communication is absolutely everything. There's so many times where we are so quick to assume, right? It's actually in this book, the author talks about the feedback wheel. So remember, it's like, once you give me your feedback, my response is supposed to be, okay, so what I'm hearing is this. Unfortunately, what I thought was the situation is not. That's my bad, right? That assumption part. And so now that we're on the same page, how can we repair, right? So that structure of communication is paramount. It's completely important and something that can never be overlooked. And I think a lot of the people who are listening or watching this right now are probably realizing, like, shit, like, we need to start with communication.
Yeah.
I mean, the harmony, disharmony thing, whatever. We just need to talk. We need to figure this out. And if you have talked and it's not getting figured out, try this harmony, disharmony repair scenario and realize, like, what, based on your boundaries and what you have to, your foundation, to the core of what you believe and what you stand for, if that's being rocked, or if it's being thrown off, if you're being thrown off, probably not right for you.
Yeah.
But the other thing that he says in the book too is, when this love addict, if you will, goes from one relationship to another, it's almost a guarantee that they're going to have the same results. And I said this to you earlier today about someone that we used to know. I was in the shower in yoga, after yoga, and Lauryn Hill was playing. I can't think of the title of the song. People help me out in the comments, but
I think when you say the song,
okay. That line that keeps getting repeated over and over. And when she says, how are you going to win when you're not right within? Really, she said, how are you going to win if you ain't right within? But what's the name of that song? I can't think of it.
I can't think of it.
But either way.
It's like one of my favorite songs, and I can't think of it.
Yeah, it's so true. How are we supposed to win if we're not even right within? And so for me, that resonates. And again, it starts with communication. I need to be honest and communicate with myself what I'm not right within with, and I need to make sure I do a better job. Also convey that to my partner in the best tone, in the best way possible, in the best delivery possible.
And I think with communication too, it's not only important to speak your truth, but also to be open to someone else's truth and accepting of someone else's truth. Because I think a lot of times, a lot of people get so stuck in their own truth that they're dismissive to what your truth could be.
Yeah, 100%. There could be, and that's the thing is let me ask you a question. Like, do you believe that there is a truth to the matter of situations, or is it just a matter of different perspectives?
Sometimes it doesn't matter what the truth is. I think it's important for, obviously without, having something to give example of, I think it's important to just understand each other's side, because maybe what your truth is versus what my truth is, that doesn't matter.
Right.
We're not trying to prove who's right or who's wrong. It's just offering a level of understanding to move on from the situation.
Yeah. Yeah, because I don't think that there's individual truths. I think there's just different perspectives and different sets of opinions.
But you have to be accepting of someone else's perspective. And I think that in the beginning of our relationship, that was like the disconnect from us, is because you would speak your truth and then I would speak my truth, and you you were never accepting to my truth,
right?
Or my perspective, or whatever you want to call it.
Sadly.
You thought everybody was wearing JD glasses.
Or at least they should be.
I just don't understand.
They should be. No.
But
sadly, yes. But yeah, and I've said this before, season 1 sometime, when I talked about the light bulb that went off the day I was in a therapy session, and I realized, as stupid and simple and just dumbed down as it sounds, that there are, whoever you're in a relationship with has their own perspective and own opinion, and it could be the right one. Who knew? But growing up in my household, it was my mom's way or the highway. And again, as I get to know my dad here in the later years, he's the same way. And so I'm built that way. I've been conditioned. It's been embedded in me to, it is your way or the highway. And if it's not, it can't be right. There's just no way it can be right.
I remember when we first started watching, I think it was like Million Little Things. And I was understanding to one of the characters, and you're like, or it was This Is Us, one of those shows. And I was understanding to one of the characters, and it was one of those scenarios where you kind of felt like, are you supposed to pick a side? You know, like whose side are you on? And I think I was understanding both, and you're like, you can't understand both. You have to pick a side.
Yeah.
And I remember that kind of stuck with me because I was like, am I supposed to pick a side?
Do you remember what it was?
I don't remember what it was, but but to kind of sum up, like the two references in the book that you said, where it's like that 70%, 30%, and then the ending part is that you just read, where, you know, welcome to marriage is when you can roll over, lay next to somebody.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's part of that percentage, because naturally we think we would need a higher percentage of good, much higher percentage of good to continue in the marriage. And it's like with those two scenarios, it's like actually a lower percentage of good, because it's more about accepting someone's imperfections.
Yeah.
And waking up to somebody and you know, being okay with the challenges, and being okay that this isn't the person you initially fell in love with, or the idea of the person wasn't initially, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like, I don't think it's ever going to be like, you're not the person that I first fell in love with, because I think we're constantly evolving, but in the best ways, you know? I actually feel like the person who you are today, I probably would have fell in love with a lot faster if you were there in 2017, you know, and I wouldn't have been moving at that turtle pace for you.
But you said a really important word there. I don't think you realize it, but you said the idea of the person. That's big.
Yeah. That's a lot of people like create this, you know, image in their head of like what their wife is supposed to be or should be.
Yep.
As you said, should.
But that's a good context to use it in, right?
Yeah. And then it's like that reality check of just realizing one day that they're not the person that you thought or, you know, envisioned them to be. And that could be, they could be a better person. They could be a worse person.
Or they could be the best person for you right now. Right? Because whenever we came up with our perfect husband or perfect wife list or perfect partner list, it limits us, because when did you create that list? What were you going through? Who were you at that time? And then that's just you forever. Yeah. And if you made the list at 23, you know, we're 28, you're going to evolve. Hopefully you're going to evolve and you're going to change.
I mean, my list at 23, your list at 23, I'm so glad I didn't, like, aren't we glad that we don't write a list at 23 and be like, oh, man, this is like,
aren't we glad we didn't marry our 23-year-old partners?
Yeah. Unless you're evolving together. Unless, because there's always, you know, I know so many beautiful relationships that have been together.
Saying like you and I. Yeah. Like if I would have married my 23 partner and you would have married your 23 partner, do you think it would be working out?
I mean, we could have been that perfect concoction that we each needed to be able to evolve into who we are today. I think even kind of just, let's say 10 years from now, we might look at who we were in 2017 and individually, and we might be like, how the heck did we survive?
I think that now.
Yeah. How the heck did we survive? But I think sometimes it's like that that beautiful concoction that we have and pull from one another that has allowed us to grow together.
Yeah. So I think in conclusion for you, I answered, you know, what I would do in terms of should you stay or should you go, and kind of my system and tools that I operate with. What would yours be if you were in a scenario where you're questioning?
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's so hard to answer that in a very black and white way. If I can just reference like my personal experience with you, because I haven't been in many, many relationships. I think it's just, for me, what helped for me to stay through all of that is seeing that inner want and need and desire that from you in wanting the things that I was needing. You know, you were wanting as much as I needed them, you were wanting to give them.
Yeah.
And that's what helped me stay, and that's what helped me have patience and grace, and then obviously just having that open communication of like really trying together to dive deep into those issues.
I'm just thinking about all the people who, you know, unfortunately are probably going through their mind right now of like, well, I've seen the signs where they've made some attempts and they revert back to their old ways, and they get out of that, and it's just like this roller coaster. Like, you don't know who you're getting and how long you're going to get them. If that is you, listener or viewer,
I think maybe just also weigh the percentages, like how much of it is bad, how much of it is good, you know? And out of the bad and good, which ones are the strong bads and the strong goods, like really kind of diving into that.
I think that's good. I think I'll also add to think about that long-term lens moment. If he or she's been doing this for the last year or two, odds are that's who they're going to be. So long-term, can you see yourself with that person? With all the good and all the bad, can you sustain this? Like,
well, kind of like what we talked about is like how you said you want to get better at loving the imperfections in me.
Yeah.
I think that you have to be okay, because you're never going to find the perfect person that's going to just like be 100% everything you want them to be. But you can weigh the imperfections and in fact try to fall in love with the imperfections, because I think there's tons of relationships or couples that I know that, you know, certain qualities or characteristics about them that are like a little off, but I see how the wife or the husband just loves that about them, you know?
Yep.
And I think that that's like, there's something so beautiful in like being able to also love the imperfections in somebody.
I think part of that beauty comes from watching them go through it, but watching them get out of it.
Yeah.
And when I say watch them go through it, not that you're enjoying watching them suffer, but you're enjoying watching them go through their process and how they're handling it, how they're handling adversity, and you know, having a certain expectation of how they're going to come out of it. And then if they actually live up to that expectation and that potential when they make it out, it's just that much sweeter. So I think that's part of the beauty of loving someone's imperfection or loving them going through the process is you knew them before, during, and after, which is a beautiful thing, and for you to be a part of that whole journey and whole story is special, because I don't think anyone else would have had that experience. If you and I,
it creates a bond between you two.
Yeah, totally.
Because not only like were you there for me when I went through all of that, but you saw how I was resilient in going through all of it.
Totally. I mean, like you said earlier, like if I was who I am today back in 2017, you would have fell in love with me quicker.
Faster, yeah.
However, if you look at it from the perspective of by you being at the beginning of my evolution journey and growth journey and healing, you probably have a way deeper love than you would have ever had if I would have been like, hi, I'm Justin, nice to meet you. And I'm like evolved already.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's kind of like, you know, when it's like the mother-child, like kind of like bond relationship is, you know, just being with somebody through so many different moments of their life, good and bad. It really ties a bond between you and that person.
Yeah, for
so
sure.
Seeing you at a place of like, you know, struggle and repair and, you know, whatever you saw me at a place in, I feel like that only kind of bonds us and creates that bond tie between us.
Yeah, for sure.
In a special way.
And lastly, you know, again, when I said I empathize with the people who are really struggling with this right now, here's another suggestion I'll throw out. Leave it alone for a little while. Maybe take a break in your relationship. Maybe part ways for a bit and let that person, you know, let you guys disconnect and
Center yourself.
Yeah, center yourselves, and let's just see like how we end up apart, you know, like what work we're doing while we're apart, and who we end up becoming while we're apart.
Yeah.
And then let's see if we revisit this. It also could be another suggestion.
Yeah.
Because sometimes like that's how we really learn, you know? So, and you could be a crutch to that person. So if you remove that crutch, then they really have no excuse. You could be enabling that person. If you remove that enabling process, and they're forced to figure it out on their own. So maybe leave it alone for a little bit and come back to it and see where you guys are. So also want to give this disclaimer too. Like I feel like I might say this in the trailer. We are not experts.
No.
By any stretch of the imagination. We are figuring this shit out like everybody else is. I personally understand that this community, there's some who look up to me. There's some who can just relate to me and maybe want to hear my perspective. Or there's some who are brand new, like who the hell is this guy and who the hell are these people? We're not experts. We're not therapists. We're not authors. No. We are just two people going through it. And we just happen to be more comfortable sharing our story and the details of our story with full transparency and vulnerability. Not that we're anyone special. We just might be the only ones doing it.
You're special. You're
special. Therefore, we are special in our own
we're all special.
Reference point perspective. But yeah, I just, you know, I've watched quite a bit of content where people come across as like know-it-alls, and it really is cringe, and it makes me uncomfortable.
Even when you ask me that question of like what advice would you give, it's just so hard because I don't know how to give advice, like just, you know, in general,
like a blanket statement,
like a black and white, like you know, it's just more my personal experience I can share.
That's all we can do.
And or just like if I had more context to like, then I can, you know, like when we're doing consultations, it's so much easier than you know, speaking to who knows who.
Yes, shameless plug.
Yeah,
that's where the real work gets unveiled, because we're really able to understand your story, understand the pieces of context, and then come in with our you know, suggestions. So, but yeah, it just felt like I needed to share that because I'm like over these people who are experts, and it's just like whack. But anyways. All right. That's it. What? That's it. That's all I got.
Thank you for tuning in, everyone. Chicago knows when it's time. He knows when we're like ending it. So until next time.
See you.
Love you.
Love you, love.